This is Conspirinormal.
Welcome back to Conspirinormal, everybody. It's Adam, and Serfiel is here.
I am here and doing better. We'll get to that later, but I am okay.
Yes, and we are glad you're okay. But like I said, like he said, we'll talk about that later. So we are very happy to welcome back someone that we had on the towards the middle of this year, and that's Carl Abrahamsson. And Carl, welcome back to Conspirinormal.
Thank you very much. Very happy to be back.
Yeah, thank you for joining us. We enjoyed our conversation that we had with you last time with you and Vanessa, and that actually we had actually switched over to a new server at that point, or a new podcast host around the same time that we did that show. And like so far on that particular podcast host, you guys is the most downloaded show. I wanted you to know that.
That's wonderful.
So you have a new book out. You actually have a couple of books out. You have one book out, and I guess kind of another one that is your latest edition of the Fenris Wolf. And we'll talk about that a little later on. But we want to talk about your latest book, which is The Devil's Footprint.
Right.
That you just put out. Did it just come out just in the last few days, or has it been out just for a little bit?
It's let's see, about a month now. I think We're now beginning of December, and I think it actually came out for Halloween. Yeah, so it's been a little bit more than a month.
Okay, well that's appropriate then for Halloween. Definitely. And it's a very interesting book, and we'll kind of talk a little bit about the plot of it. But what kind of inspired you to write this particular novel?
Well, I think that first of all, I like these kinds of books myself, meaning, it's obviously a satire, it has an element of humor, but at the same time, there is this kind of sardonic, band-aid ripping. It kind of presses, I hope, where it hurts. And the theme is that God, as we know him or her in our culture, is tired and sort of can't deal with all the humans and the mess they've created. And there's this deal going on where God basically tells Satan, who's doing fine, that hey, fix this and you can be welcome back up in heaven and be my favorite archangel. And Satan is just like, whoa, okay, that sounds interesting, a new challenge. And then this incredible operation begins, which in which Satan and his so-called Team Apocalypse basically cleans up the human mass with overpopulation, with environmental disasters, with corruption. So it's like a really massive operation. And God sort of, he cocks his eye, but he doesn't really want to interfere, because it is essentially a good thing. So we have this power dynamic between humans and then the other humans, and between Satan and God, and between God and the archangels who don't like Satan, etc., etc. So it's like, in a way, it's like an adventure story. But the reason why I wanted to use the context or have this age-old, millennia-old, culturally old dynamic between what we call God and Satan is that it's, I think, very usable when we look and possibly critique our own times. You could argue that it's arcane and, it played out, it's symbolic functions. But at the same time, you have these two different spirits in a way. One is very conservative and wants to keep things as they are. And then there's this slightly more rebellious, innovative, creative character who is more in touch with, I guess, the human spirit. But then you have this, the fall from grace, which in humanity's case has been basically one of corruption. It's led to a lot of problematic issues. So that big subject I wanted to talk about, but in a kind of a humoristic aspect. And the satire is a good language when you want to comment on slightly hidden or cloaked in a way when you're commenting on things that are going on today. So in that sense, it was almost like the world got worse as I wrote the book, and reality was constantly feeding in. What should I write about today? And it was just things being presented on the news all the time. So in that sense, it's been an interesting process, and I think it's also an adventure story. It does have a moral in a way, and without spoiling the story, it's basically giving a very clear message. Things have to change by upheaving, by actually uprooting our dualistic view of things. Dualism is way, way, way too easy, and it's problematic. And we can see that again every day in the news, where an extreme dualism basically will lead to our extinction, because it completely kills off the possibility to communicate, and thereby the possibility to create new solutions for these quite dire problems that we all share. The problems are not unique to any particular group. This is extinction-based problems we have, and thereby we need to rethink how we act and interact. And that's basically what the premise of the morals of the book is.
And you kind of show how these outdated religious, philosophical, and political systems that rely on dualism are really failing to address the current things that are going on that are as existential questions. And I guess a lot of that dualism revolves around man versus nature, as well as the classic good and evil.
Yeah, that's part of the game, that, or part of the inheritance in terms of thinking and morals and stuff like that. It's been coming out, and it's basically a monotheistic attitude, where man is looked upon as the crown of creation, and thereby has the right to rule over nature. But you could put any human being alone without any tools, and just put him or her in a forest or in a jungle or at sea or wherever, and the anxiety that comes is very strong, because we are actually not necessarily like the crown of creation. We are just one animal among many other animals and other forces in nature also. So it's an illusion, but that illusion has been nurtured by these dualistic forces. Let's call them monotheistic, but there are other, political movements that have stemmed also out of these religious environments, and it's all the same. It's this not dealing with the other, not dealing with the shadow, as Jung would say, not dealing with that which is not like me. And when you don't do that, there is an inherent dualism which will be enhanced, and the groove will be deeper, not even over the passing of a generation. And then when you consider, what do we have? We have 2,000-3,000 years of this thinking that has spread across the globe. Luckily for us, we have other parts of the world which are not monotheist, and I think that will be probably our saving grace, that we can rely on the multitude of people as actual leverage, saying that, hey, these, polytheistic or pantheistic cultures seem to be doing a lot better, actually. So let's look at what they're doing. But that is just me being optimistic. The book in itself, I think, carries it's in between, which is, as a book like that should be. It's pessimistic on one side, but it also carries optimism, especially as it has a resolution, which we won't talk about now specifically, but that goes completely against the grain, against this, I would say, masculine, monotheistic, patriarchal thing. And I don't want to weave in a lot of contemporary issues, sort of, examining the patriarchal whatever. This is more down to earth power dynamics. Yeah. And these are not contemporary things. They have been going on for a long, long, long time. And it's definitely time to change things for the better. Not necessarily flip the coin, but maybe toss the coin. Like there's one scene in the book where Satan actually tosses a coin from up on the Rockefeller Center in New York, and has a bit of a philosophical moment about that. But that, I think, basically is like, we have used that. There's one side, okay, so there's another side. There's a flip side to the front side. But, in terms of currency, whether we talk about financial currency or philosophical currency, ways of looking at the world, maybe something like a globe is a more relevant symbol than having the either plus or minus, for or against, black or white, etc. It's not really any new philosophical challenge, but I do think that it seems that we need to address this more and more every week that passes, every day that passes, because the detrimental aspects of this could be absolutely disastrous, actually.
So you would see that we need to try to look at the problems of the world a little bit more complexly than looking at things in like a good or evil or a black and white issue.
Absolutely. And I mean, the thing is that when you look at the key problems, whether they're environmental or, now with the pandemic and stuff like that,
yeah.
it is possible to solve a lot of things and solve a lot of things very quickly. All you need is leverage. All you need is decision making, because the technical expertise and the scientific expertise is there.
Right.
Britain just started doing the vaccine today.
Right. Yeah, William Shakespeare got vaccinated today.
What?
In what sense?
A man named William Shakespeare got vaccinated today.
Oh, okay.
Yes.
Yeah, no, but I mean, so it is completely possible to do these things, but it needs to be swifter processes. If you have this thing where, oh boy, so many coral reefs are going extinct, then you just sort of leave all the unimportant stuff that's going on and just focus on that, because that's more important. So, and again, I think that Satan's attitude in the book is going from being a fairly, comfortable rebel rouser, provocateur, enjoying life, being kind of an Epicurean sheriff, in a way, punishing the unjust, but in fun ways. And I think that what happens is that Satan along the way realizes that, whoa, these things need fixing, because if I don't fix it, no one else will, and there will be no fun anymore, because there will be no humans to play with. So, and it's that simple. And we are, in the Western world, we can sit with our beautiful technology and, be comfortable during this pandemic, for instance, and still communicate and work and stuff like that. But it's really remarkable how we can find solace in this a kind of extreme isolation, for instance, because normal circumstances has to do, they bring social interaction, the possibility of not only meeting people, but actually touching people. And I think that this kind of isolation will have far-reaching implications in our culture's psyche over the coming decades, because the isolation, we can deal with it because we are completely bombarded with entertainment, and we can, watch series and streaming, like binge watch until we die, basically. But still, humans have certain needs. And for instance, those people who are not involved in a steady relationship and thereby have like sexual channels or sexual relations, it must be absolutely horrendous. And I mean, I could see other bad things, not just depressions, but other, burnouts and absolutely havoc in the minds of people who cannot interact the way human beings are supposed to interact. And it's not that there's a bad guy with a gun saying you can't do this. It's like a ghost or a blanket of the invisible enemy that has been put upon us. And of course, the sad thing is that this happens on a regular basis, and we need to be prepared for it. And without delving too much into politics or anything, but it is kind of interesting, that the previous administration had all of these things in place, to be prepared for a pandemic. That was a crucial issue. And then, unfortunately, the present administration just said that this is not really important at all. And ergo, there's a big problem in America right now, as also all over the world. But still, it's a matter of priority, a matter of focus. And again, maybe also a matter of honesty, cultural honesty, saying that, whoa, this really hurts to think about. It's horrific, but maybe we should think about this and address these issues before they actually happen.
Yeah, I think
it might be too late.
I think that it would be great to be proactive, and I could definitely see that, like, after this is done, that we are going to be proactive. People are going to be proactive so that something like this doesn't happen again. I mean, they talk about that this was an every 100-year pandemic, because the last major one was the Spanish flu, and we kind of had minor flu ones in between this and then. But the thing is that now, and a lot of this goes into the reason that we have this virus is really because of going into forests and taking these animals out and it jumping to our species, right? And that's a direct cause of something about what you write in the book about this environmental degradation, what we're doing to the environment. It's a direct cause of that. And I think that now we have to be much more vigilant because of what is, you don't know what is waiting in a rainforest that has stood for centuries.
Exactly, or in this ice that is melting at the poles.
Right.
Talk about, because the thing is that viruses, bacteria. If people are interested in aliens, for instance, there's a lot of stuff coming in from space every day. Life forms that are not, aliens or the Greys or look humanoid, whatever, but it's simply a lot of stuff. And who knows, if that allow that 100 years or 1,000 years to form and merge with other things. And then that could be something very, extremely detrimental to the animals on this planet, including us. But as you say, there's still hidden stuff underground and in the jungles and in the ice and stuff like that. So I think it's just what I wanted to do with the book was basically just, what can I do to contribute? Well, I can write about this in a provocative way. People will be revolted against one of the solutions that Satan has, for instance, in the book, having to do with decimating the overpopulation. But the reason why those things are mentioned is to actively go beyond the comfort zone and have people think, whoa, yeah, that's right. There is something called overpopulation. We should probably not deal with it in the same way as Satan does. But there's still these things that are so painful to address that people rather don't. And when the individuals don't, then the collectives won't either. And there you have a problem, because that takes away the power of the leverage of the collective in a way. So yeah, anyway, to sort of connect it with the book again, it was incredibly fun to write it because of the fact that it felt so incredibly, current affairs. Mm-hmm. But at the same time, also make sure to weave in this, the humor and also the philosophical aspects of it, because the world isn't strictly causal. It's not only about, do this and fix this and everything will be fine. There needs to be ideals involved also, reasons and motivations for doing things, not just mere survival. We're not at that point yet, but we could be soon.
Well, the thing I found most interesting was that coming from someone like you, who I know appreciates often extreme forms of individualism, how you're addressing these collective problems, and individualism taken to a suicidal extreme is not rational and not profitable for the individual, obviously. And we get individualism convoluted with just pure self-interest.
Yeah.
And, of course, the modern way of looking at things is that most people are self-interested and selfish anyway, but most of them are not actually strong individuals themselves. And that there's this lack of will in the entrenched elite. I could see this as being really provocative also because, like, I know in the conspiratorial right now, they're kind of on fire with these, with Davos this year and the World Economic Forum, and this idea of a great reset, and they're already saying they're trying to, design this new world, when really the World Economic Forum is probably just giving platitudes because they understand that things are going to have to change, and they still want to make money. But I really like how you balance that and pick apart individualism from simply this consumer concept that we have.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I think that it's also, again, we are so privileged in our part of the world, and we can talk about these things and talk about, individualism and Crowley and Thelema and, all these things. But it's basically, it's a luxury. Most people can't even speculate about these things because maybe they simply have to survive, or they have to fend for themselves, or it's just dire, or, it's not an easy life in most parts of the world, actually. So what I think I want to say also is that it's great to be, it's great to be me, great to be a Western, well-educated individualist. And I also feel happy about promoting individualism and stuff like that. But maybe it also has to do with age, in the sense that you see a slightly bigger picture. And especially in the problematic times like ours. And you can say that, well, it's great to be an individual, but again, how individual can I be when I'm alone? Especially when growing older and you need other, people to take care of you. And that's the thing that's been probably the most sad thing about the pandemic, at least here in Sweden, is that it's mostly taking its toll among the really old people in the elderly homes. Once the virus got in there, it was just like a bowling alley. And the problem is that then you realize that, well, many of these old people, they're also individualists, but they cannot really be individualists because they have no support system. So no matter how youthfully, virile and strong you feel, there will be a day when you are the same on the inside, meaning you carry the same philosophy and the same ideals, but the outer surroundings change. So does that invalidate the philosophy? No, I don't think so. But I think you have to open your mind and your vision slightly more to realize that my individualism is made possible by my allowing other people to serve me. But there's a contract in this. I also need to serve something back, because otherwise you're just a rogue or a bully or a thief even. So in that sense, it's not really super advanced philosophy. It's just basically kind of an economical attitude, meaning if I want to be in control of my time, I need to pay other people to supply me with certain things so that I can focus on doing what I want to do with my time. So basically, I think it's kind of the main insight is basically shamanic in a way, or it's pantheistic, or maybe even psychedelic, in the sense that we are all connected. There are no isolated units who can, like Zarathustra, be on the mountain and look down and, laugh and madness and whatever. It doesn't work like that. In reality, we can achieve a lot of things. And if we want to be, solitaires or work alone, we still have to be involved in the social contract with other people. We have to eat. And, if you want to be a diehard and be in the jungle and hunt your own food and stuff like that, then you will have no time or energy to think about philosophical concepts, then
Right.
getting the food will be the only thing that matters. So it is. I was going to say it's tricky. It's not really tricky. It's kind of obvious actually. But our concept, which is like philosophical, magical, Thelemic, satanic in a way, of individualism, still carries a lot of needs, and those needs have to do with social interaction.
Well, I think there's just like, even like Crowley and, LaVey even, I mean, there was still this, I mean, I'm not as maybe familiar with the philosophy as you two guys are, but it's like you could do what you wanted to do, but you didn't want to hurt people. You could not hurt another person, another individual. And so, in that sense, it recognizes exactly what you were just saying, Carl, that like, even though you are an individual, you still have to be part of society.
Exactly, and you can be that in secret. I mean, many people are happy with that, to just have their own armchair philosophy or magic thing going, and that's fine. Or you could take on the role of being a spokesperson for for someone or something. But it's still, that's because the culture or society grants you that. You can go against a totalitarian society, but probably not for long as an individual. Something is like this Japanese saying, where the nail that sticks out will be hammered down.
Yeah.
And that's the same thing. That's happened with so many individualists, and that's why I think that the best way to promote individualism is simply by inspiring people to show that it's possible, but you don't need to go into a clinch with some kind of illusion of an opponent. Again, that's a dualistic way of thinking, saying that I have to be against these people to feel that I'm for myself, but it's a complete illusion. Individualism is basically about what makes you motivated, what makes me motivated to feel the maximum amount of happiness as possible. And those things come in many different packages depending on who you are. But I would say that only a fraction, 1,000 of 1,000, actually find happiness and joy in being an opponent to that level where they get hammered down. And that also should tell that those people are probably more masochistic than what they would prefer to be seen as some kind of sadistic or super strong individuals. But if you provoke something that you inherently know is much stronger than you, then maybe the best way to change it is not to go head on in a clinch.
Well, and if these collective problems threaten your very survival, then resisting that and maintaining this rugged individualism is irrational, and that is not very satanic.
No, absolutely. And also you could always bring up this example of people in horrible wars who have witnessed horrible things, and people said that why didn't you do this, and why didn't you show some kind of civil courage or things like that. But that's very easy to criticize other people from our comfortable position, because in that moment maybe the only thing that mattered was that person wanted to survive, and could have left the horrible scene or looked the other way, whatever. We can't judge from our ivory towers. It's kind of impossible in a way. You have to look at things at those circumstances that were around at the time. And again, our privileged position is not the rule. It's an extreme exception to what's going on. And I, for one, am very happy to be me in this time and to have these opportunities and, to talk to you on the podcast and to publish the books and stuff. But I'm also aware of that had I been born, in a different country, this would not have been possible. So I think that's one of the reasons why I work so hard with these things, is that I want to get all this stuff out there simply because I can. And I hope that it will be able to inspire people to again, deal with their own stuff.
It is very provocative. I'm interested in seeing the reception. I'm interested in seeing people who may not really get it, get a hold of it or get wind of it, and I could see how they would use it as proof that the devil's actual plan is being put into place.
Maybe,
There's
maybe I'm a double agent, because I think that since I usually only preach to the already converted, meaning on the dark side, some of those have been critical of hey, why are you bringing in God and stuff like that? What's going on? As if this was some kind of realistic boxing game. It's just a little satire. But even that is provocative for the other side. You could argue that, well, these, the Christians will go bananas, or the evangelists or whatever, when they find that, devil is the protagonist and helps save the earth and God looks the other way. But it's equally provocative for the atheists or for the dark side people, the fact that God has an actual part in this. That's how strongly divided, how strong this dualistic way of thinking is. You can only root for your own team, even if both teams are actually playing the same game. It's weird.
To kind of go back to your discussion about individualism and duality and how we like to put ourselves into camps. I mean, over here, I don't know what it's like in Sweden or in Europe as a whole, but over here, this seems to be the way that we're living now. Is everybody's got their own little political tribe. And then you've got things over here like the QAnon movement, which has become this vast movement that really sees everything in this sense of black and white as good versus evil. And it's starting to get to the point that it's starting to get really, really scary. So I really appreciate your viewpoint on the whole duality of that we need to start looking at things in other ways, and stop looking at things melodramatically and start looking at things in a more complicated way. Because what we're seeing now here in the United States is just the opposite of that.
Yeah. No, it's kind of hard to comprehend. Again, we have, we follow the news and things like that. And it's so incomprehensible. I mean, it's one thing with this age-old, again, the super dualism between, Democrats and Republicans. That's one thing. And that can go horribly wrong too. But with these other movements that are outside of that arena, because they don't even respect the arena, it's a kind of, I don't know how I should define it, but it seems to be like a vent or a vault that it's been like the entire culture has been such a pressure cooker, maybe encouraged, maybe not, but the pressure has been so strong that the only way people can come up to the surface and breathe in a way is by swimming either in this direction or in that direction. It's like no middle ground. There's like only channels leading people up to the surface. But at the same time, there is this, as you say, is a kind of an ultra division in which lies are consciously disseminated as truths. So that's one thing. But the horrible thing to realize is that people aren't even questioning it. So what's the reason for that? I think it has to do with allegiance. People are so afraid of what's going on. There's so much anxiety going on culturally, and maybe these global issues too, and the fact that they cannot get their own individual insight into what's really going on or how to act. So there you have classically the religions, and America is basically a Christian country. So you have Christianity, specifically the evangelicals, shouting out with their megaphones, and this is what needs to happen, and they've sided with the Republicans, or should we say the conservative side of things. But these other ones that you mentioned, they are attracting people who can't even find solace in these very accessible environments. It's easy. Most people, have connection to some kind of church or movement, or maybe they find it in even in entertainment or escapism. They just want to get their solace in a way, their dose of feeling okay, and not feel anxious. But these other people are in a way encouraging the anxiety and shouting out, join this and cheer this, and you will feel much better. And there you have a complete fascist scenario. That's basically what happened in Germany and in many other countries, where when people no longer question the truth that they know is a truth, and instead just simply arbitrarily replace it with a lie. And that's, terrifying, because again, if we talk about the power of leverage, a few well-educated people can argue this and that, but in a democracy, if sort of the other side wins, how can you argue? Because those people are not willing to argue. They will do their damnedest to change things. And that's basically what's been happening during these past 4 years too. As much change as possible to not have a free discussion, to not have a critical thinking, but simply to integrate lies as if there were truths. And that it's a very, very interesting situation, and of course very problematic for your country.
We recently spoke to Eric Davis, and he talks a lot about. He has been talking a lot about the global pandemic and the embrace of irrationality that you're talking about as an almost occult-like or shamanistic journey that a lot of people are getting themselves involved in who do not have a background in these things and don't really understand what's going on. Do you have any insight into that?
Yeah. I think I touched upon it a little bit, and I certainly understand what Eric is saying. It is the dealing of trauma without the proper tools, and in whether you're on, like, you go on a psychedelic trip or a shamanic journey, or if you have other kinds of spiritual things, even the established ones like Christianity and Islam, that is a language. It gives people tools to deal with things that are traumatic. I mean, culturally, we have the church helps us when we're born and we get married, have kids, and when we die. These problematic big changes and shifts, and not all of them are traumatic, of course. But when you lose a grip of your own individual understanding of how the world works, then that's a very, very threatening trauma. And how do you get out of it? Well, you could join something. You could join, the Masons, or you could join yoga or other sort of extra environments that are in the vicinity in our specific culture. But at the same time, when you come to the point when there's not just a set of ideals or some kind of morals, like with this group, like the Masons, or within yoga, etc. When there's nothing else but these shouting, megaphones of hatred, then most people get drawn into that, because in a way they want to find themselves and find community and solace, but at the same time they also want to lose themselves. So I can see the appeal of it, but that as a journey to finding yourself will never happen, because they go down an underworld journey in which there are no shamans. There are no people to help you find that thing. It's just a feedback loop of hatred. And they come up with these ridiculous conspiracies, which 10 years ago, 15 years ago, would have been impossible. And again, I'm not out to analyze the American political landscape, but the thing is that we are seeing a crisis of people not being able to deal with the trauma. And what is the trauma? Well, it's on a global scale, it's on national scale, but mostly it's on an individual scale. People have, they're poor, they're not so well educated. They can feel the economic crises. Then you have a pandemic on top. So there's all of these like invisible enemies Because if you're at war, you can say that, well, it's these people. We have to go and fight the war. But in this case, it's all invisible. So the people who write the script and who also deal with the narration in their megaphones, they can, expleet anything. And the sad thing is that many, many people buy it. Even literally. And it's, I can't see a way out of that. You can talk about healing the divide or whatever the political language is, but I think it needs to go into repair mode. That's not simply a balancing, but again, like I'm touching upon in The Devil's Footprint also, there needs to be a completely new mode. And when you only have two basic political parties, that is going to be very, very problematic, because that reflects the cultural standpoint in which you have people who are one way and the other people are simply the other, and vice versa. It's a very, very difficult situation. And of course, the disenfranchised will feel even more disenfranchised because they can't see that culture as such is making any headway. Actually, it's getting worse, actually.
Just dualism leads to more dualism, which I believe a character in your book says.
I do want to ask you, Carl, about the character of the devil and how you characterize him. I guess you never really call him the devil. You do call him Satan or Lucifer in the book.
Yeah.
But the way you characterize him, he's kind of a trickster in a way. So you really kind of hone in on kind of like that trickster archetype. What kind of did you draw on for the character of his character in that?
Well, I think that there's a lot. It's like a posit of what I like. that's but I always liked the devil figure that is gleeful, that certainly helps out these egotistical almost brutish, rapacious, but he knows that they are so unenlightened and stupid that they will see me later on, meaning that he has this kind of sense of justice that even if he's on, so-called the other side, meaning the other side from the benevolent God, who's the creator of everything that's good. And then you have Satan, he has taken on the role in a way in this dualism. But at the same time, he has a more refined sense of justice than God has. So that kind of humor where Satan is almost like playing with people, using pawns, because they are so greedy, they are so insular, so basically stupid. And that's what God talks about, this disease being humanitis. It's when you're so tired of this constant lack of a greater view or perspective, when you're only completely self-certain the worst possible way. That's what Satan likes to point his finger at and aid and abet, but always with gleeful knowledge that this will not last for long. And the people who are actually Satan realize they are good, we leave them alone. In this book, for instance, we have indigenous cultures, we have farmers who are only interested in farming, down to earth people. Satan is like the true benefactor of the good folks in a way. In terms of inspiration proper, I have, for instance, one film called Angel on My Shoulder, which is the devil coming up to Earth. It's funny. And that character is exactly the satirical commentator on the folly of man. Mark Twain's Letters from the Earth, where Satan puts letters. Yeah, that's a good one. I read that time ago, and I decided not to read it again when I was writing the book. I felt that book did affect me in a great way, but quite a long while ago. So I'm turning to that book now because I love Mark Twain. Basically, another film, what's it called? The Devil's Advocate, where Al Pacino is this all-powerful, exactly this kind of thing, aiding and abetting a lot of on the surface, but at the same time completely weaving in a glee, seeing these mighty people fall because of their stupidity and sort of unjustified in a way. And there are many others also, but basically the devil in this narrative is someone who sort of voluntarily accepts this challenge, realizing, as he does along the way, God will absolutely two-time and trick him out of the promised chariot in heaven, but still doing this immense task balancing the earth and the people because of the fact that he also cares. Satan cares about what's going on, because if everything in his kingdom goes to hell in the wrong way, then there's no real hell to deal with and have fun with. It's a kind of a lose-lose situation that becomes a win-win situation.
And you kind of paint hell as kind of like this kind of like pleasant place.
Yes, yes, I do. Yeah, and I think that it's I can't remember the exact description, but it's like the way I describe it, or the way Satan describes it in the book, is like it's more like a very boring and neutral kind of designer hotel where most people just stay in the room, do whatever it is that makes them tick. So there's like no real punishment. There's punishment there for people who are bad. But Satan also has this capacity to, as he off people. That means literally turning them off. So they don't need to be punished. They could just be, terminated. Whereas hell seems to be more like a kind of a fun playground for people who are completely aware of the fact that they did things wrong when in life on earth. At the same time, they are good people. They have not done a malicious, consciously, like the evil things. They are just, Epicurean, intelligent people who prefer the company of other Epicureans and intelligent people, rather than having, sanctimonious, enforced spiritual in this ethereal sphere that, as we find in the book, seems completely filled up with conspiracies and babbling, and it's not a paradise at all. Hell seems to be the truth in this book.
Yeah, I like how you incorporate these historical figures like Machiavelli and Ambrose Bierce, and Marlene Dietrich is in there somewhere, and it's all it's all pretty interesting. And another thing too, you title it "The Devil's Footprint," and I understand that actually, and I had to look this up when I read the introduction to the novel, that actually is a real thing.
Yeah, that was the starting point of the entire thing. It's like I was with Vanessa in Germany, in Munich, and I think in the spring of 2018, and we were at this just sightseeing, strolling around this beautiful town, and we came to this church, and in there's a footprint that's tiled, it's a footprint and tile. I don't know how that actually came about, but of course I tried my foot. That's what everybody does. Mine fit actually perfectly, but that's not important. The starting point was that
nice.
Yeah, the start is that this mythic quality of even just print in a tile on the floor in this church. People, they stand in line to match their foot in this thing, and devout pious will do it too, and kids and old people. So that in itself is culturally and mythically interesting. Would you want to do that? But at the same time, I was fascinated by the thing that at one point in time and space, someone decided not only to put a footprint there, but that was going to be the devil's footprint. And how the hell is that possible? And that got me started at the beginning of the book, which takes place in the 16th century, where the devil involved as a banker, as a facilitator for this church to be built. Again, helping out God in a way with practical things on earth, wanting his something in return. So that's how that began. So it's a real thing. It's a real mythic thing, or an interesting sort of old tourist attraction in Munich. But then, of course, that spawned a lot of their thoughts and current affairs things. And I also consciously wanted to weave in these people that you mentioned, for instance, and there are others too. Also, the fact I want to show the mythology, not specifically only of the devil, but mythology as such, as being created by human beings. So if I weave in these people and claim that Machiavelli isn't as Satan as people seem to believe, actually we can disclose to a pretty brutal ending in the Devil's Footprint, but still it makes the historical people come alive in a way, gives them I shine a different light on many of these people. In a way, it's casual. From my point of view, I wanted to weave in real people, either because I think that they deserve it, like in the case with Machiavelli. Satan's favorite mistress, I guess, in the story is Marlene Dietrich that you mentioned. So I love her too. I would love. So in that sense, it's fun to write. The reason I wanted to weave in these historical figures is simply because it's not something that is untouched. History is being created every day. Not only news reporting and not only by academic history writers. It's being created every day, every minute, every hour, every week. Fiction is an incredibly poor thing, and I wanted to, in a way, to pay homage to these people that I've mentioned by name in the book. It could be negative homage, or it could be positive homage. I'm no fan of Machiavelli, for instance, and he comes to a brutal end in the book. I do love Marlene Dietrich, so she has a prominent benevolent role in the storyline.
Not a big fan of the writer of The Prince, huh?
Yeah. No, I think that he was good in a way, but I don't like the public image of how people use him as a symbol of something that may not have been the case at all. He wrote certain things. Then there were a lot of people along the centuries who wrote things about him. That's the nature of the game. When you're a public figure, you will be touted. You will be forever criticized. But it goes from you being you, alive, native, to something completely different. When you've written something, you will become either, sadly, some people get forgotten, completely forgotten, but most people, they live on through their works, whether it's, paintings or movies or books, basically fictional accounts. And I think Machiavelli was a kind of an amateur. He was, manipulator. But in this manipulation is also a strong sense of immorality. And like it or not, the Satan of my book is not immoral. He's actually a very moral character. And he dislikes this servility that people like Machiavelli actually stands for. Because he would go this prince or this king if it benefited him. And that kind of immorality, the Satan of my book not appreciate, because also Machiavelli tries to double cross him.
So I want to talk. Let's talk a little bit about the Fenris Wolf that you published. Now, how did this start with this? I guess it's. I mean, it's. I guess it's a magazine, but I mean, it's really it's a full scale book. I guess. How did you start publishing this?
Yeah, Fenris Wolf became an example of the fact that when I was in my teens, I became addicted to making printed matter, writing and taking pictures, having my own scenes. They were mostly about, music and movies and comics and stuff like that. I think I started around 15 to make my fanzines. And then as I grew slightly older, my interests changed from garage rock and weird music and movies to the more magical things, but I still wanted to have my fanzine, and this was way back in 88 1989. So the Fenris Wolf from the beginning was my occult fanzine. It looked like a fanzine, like a magazine. But then I realized I know so many great people in basically through the Temple of Psychic Youth and other groups that I was involved with. And they were all super willing to provide me with ace materials, fantastic situation. So I just rolled with it. And up until 93, there were in total 3 issues, 1 magazine and then books. So that was number 3. Then, life happened and I got involved with unpublished other occult books, but the Fenris Wolf, for some reason, simply had to go into hibernation up until 2011. And then I guess every other year or so since then, I've published a new issue, and they're all big books. The number 10 is the one I think you saw, is 422 pages. So it's a massive thing, and that's the way it is, because this kind of eclectic mix of psychedelic, occult, weaving in cultural and occultural topics and issues. It's a very popular mix, and I'm of course very, very happy about that. So, and I'm also doing the readers a service by republishing all the old issues, 3 more to go, because when they came out, they became, they sold out, but then they started fetching these insane prices on eBay. But I would rather have them out in fairly inexpensive editions so that everybody who to read about these cool things can do so, and order whatever they are on this planet. So that's my thing, working on new Fenris Wolves, but also the old ones, making sure that they're all available. And of January or so, they will all be available again. Right now, as I said, it's like 3 issues in these new editions.
About this number 10 that you recently put out, what is there any kind of different theme to this one, or is there emphasis on this edition?
No, not really, because the editorial policy that I have is to be eclectic, not for its own sake. It's just a reflection of my mind, basically. I'm very curious and I'm interested in many things, as you know, and I don't like kind of a sectaristic approach in this thing. So I don't foresee, for instance, that there will even be thematic issues. I want to present each new issue as a little package of fireworks, in a way. People shouldn't read it, from cover to cover. They can read one thing there and one other thing here, and just, use the book as a source of temporary entertainment or enlightenment. I came up with this one with a new term. Maybe someone has come up with it before. I call it delightment, meaning that it should be fun and it should be entertaining, but it should also have the potential of enlightening people regardless of what it's about. In this, we have a massive piece about the beautiful Danish silent film called Witchcraft Through the Ages. Yeah. And there's writing about magical anthropology, and there's the complete story of how the Satanic Bible came to be, and many, many other things. There's really something for everybody in there. And that's exactly how I like it. So basically what I do is that I pull the strings in my normal network, and I usually get good stuff, but I also try to be active and keep track specifically of like younger academics who are not yet corrupted by the formality and stiffness of academics, and see what they can come up with. And it's a big world out there with many brilliant people, young and old, from different kinds of groups and orders and traditions. And I want, like I said, the Finnish Wolf to be like an intellectual melting pot in a way. And that's why it's been very interesting to revisit the older issues now that I'm preparing them for republication, to see that there is that consistency, there is that a consistent red thread of open-mindedness and tolerance and things that I like.
Yeah, I'd got a chance to read quite a few of them. You have one, you have a few in here, but you have one about the Fenris Wolf as libidinal liberator. Can you elaborate on that a little bit?
Yeah, I've been thinking for a long time. People say that, who is the Fenris Wolf? What's it all about? And the reason I chose it as a name way back in the late 80s was that I was very interested in my own roots and the Scandinavian belief and those gods and stuff like that. And it's a rich mythology. There's no doubt about that. And it sort of has a lot of magic and strong stories and just great, colorful, mythology. And the Fenris Wolf specifically, the reason why I chose it at that time was I was very enamored with the dark side in a way. And the Fenris Wolf is not like a good guy in this mythology, because you have the gods like Odin and Thor and Frey and Freya, what we would call like the benevolent or good guys in a way. And then you have Loki, who is the trickster, and Loki is the father of the Fenris Wolf and some other forces. So when you look at it closer, though, the reason why I say it's a rich mythology is that it fulfills all the elements of a good, healthy mythology, meaning that nothing is ever as it seems. So what is good, what is bad? Well, the gods, they're not so good. They're fucking devious, and they're self-serving, and they're basically acting as humans again.
Right.
So they need these shadow figures to set things right, or, as in the case with the Fenris Wolf, to aid the end of the world, to lead things forward towards Ragnarök, as this cataclysm is called. But the reason why that happens is that that's a regular thing that needs to happen so that everything can be born again. And there you have the essence of again, what I call the healthy mythologies, is like birth, life, death, rebirth in a cycle forever. Because if things become static, inert, that becomes like a death drive stuck in a groove. And I would argue that that's exactly what's happened to the monotheistic religions, is that there is nothing but a longing for the great cataclysm, but there is no sense of hope. There is no sense of rebirth in a way. So the Fenris Wolf, on one hand, is a negative or dark character who sort of swallows the sun at this cataclysmic end of the world. But that's exactly the thing that facilitates for the rebirth and make new gods and new land and new earth, etc. So it's a fascinating thing. But then I also called this one because I'm fascinated with who isn't? I was going to say sexual matters. Who isn't interested in that? So from the point of view of a sexual mythology, it's very interesting because you have in the myth, there is a lot of hanky-panky going on with the gods. Again, as in any healthy mythology. And Loki specifically is not all negative, but he has shape-shifting qualities. And I would argue, some others would too, that Loki is basically Odin's shadow figure. So they're basically the same, and they are experimenting, and they deal with a lot of sexual magics and stuff like that. And the Fenris wolf is very much like the raging libido that's being restrained by the gods who want to keep their particular Asgard community in order. To keep it bourgeois in a way. But the Fenris wolf is like a wild libidinal force. So I like to read that kind of writing, which we could call like speculative mythological analysis. And I intend to write more about that kind of stuff too, because I think it gives, it shows the mythology as such, as something that is not written in stone, it's not encased in a box, it's something that is also being developed. This mythology is not something that existed way back when, in primeval times, and then no more, because actually right now, 2020, you and I are discussing it. And the Fenris wolf is a journal, and there are people actually practicing this old pagan religion. I don't, but I certainly don't oppose it. But I'm very interested in how the mythology still affects us. And I think it can be so deeply rooted. For instance, I think that our genetic mass, our DNA, is kind of like a recording device. So things that we experience in life, whether action, physical things, or even thinking, it's all being moved on in new procreation. That means that in my specific case, because I come from this region, there is like this old pagan stuff embedded in me. And that makes it very fascinating for me to sort of reconnect with it. That doesn't mean that I have to go out and sacrifice some fruits or stuff to Odin, but there are people who are doing that, and that's fine. But I can connect in different ways, and I like to do that for sure.
Yeah, I was curious if is there a big resurgence in the Scandinavian countries
Well,
of the old Norse religions?
Yeah, but it's not really a resurgence. I mean, there are certainly groups that you call resurgent, but the pagan stuff is still all around us. It never went away in a way. And the most beautiful example of that is probably the midsummer celebration in Sweden, which is a big thing. It's like as big as Christmas in a way, where people get together out in nature and their countryside places, and you create this incredible phallus, which is like a cross with two balls basically on the what do you call it, the crossbar. So and these things are carried in procession, clothed with flowers, and then actually stuck into the ground. And this is not like a religious sort of pagan thing. It's what families do, and they dance around this phallus that's down in the set down in the earth, and it's like a family fest. And it's very, very cool. So that's why I can say that, it never really went away. Then, of course, it's a Christian country in the sense that it's, Protestant, but fairly secular. But this thing with Sweden is very different even from Denmark, because in Denmark, at the time of midsummer celebration, they have a fire on which they burn a witch effigy. That would never happen in Sweden. We celebrate the witches at Valpurgis, for instance. There are big bonfires, and the young girls dress up as witches. We don't burn them, we celebrate them. So in that sense, I'm sure there are groups that try to reenact, in a way, old Scandinavian rituals and concrete Asa true things. They are here for a fact, absolutely. But I think it's not such a big thing here because of the fact that it's so well grounded already.
Yeah, it's pretty fascinating. I mean, the you're right about that it's not really a resurgence, because like when the Christian church came in, they kind of just took a lot of the beliefs and amalgamated it into like syncretized it.
Absolutely. And that's how smart people do, because if you come in with too much force, it would just be a backlash. The best thing is always to take over slowly, in a way. But I mean, it's fascinating. I think again, feel very blessed to to live in this country and to have lived, previously here also, in the sense that there is a strong connection with nature here. I wouldn't say that all Swedes are like some kind of, mystical people or anything. They're not, but there is a great respect for nature. And of course, that's the fundament of all healthy religion. It's your own relationship to greater nature. Everything else is just proxy, basically. So in that sense, I feel that the Nordic mythology is very vibrant in the same way that Hinduism is, in a way, because of the fact that there are so many gods and they're all representations of psychic aspects or emotional aspects of the individual human. It's easier to relate to gods, both their good qualities and bad qualities, if you know that they're basically parts of you. If there's only one angry daddy, it doesn't, lead to a whole lot of good.
Do you think that we're, in a sense, kind of going back to some kind of polytheism?
Yeah, I mean, the Swedish religion, or the Scandinavian also religion, that's a polytheistic religion. Yeah, there are many gods, all representing different, qualities, and that's why those stories are so fun to read. Also, comparing it with Hindu gods, it's like these weird, fanciful adventure stories filled with magic and weird things.
So, I did want to ask you this. And I know that they have to. Scandinavian countries, do they have their own kind of like equivalent of the fairy lore that like is in the British Isles? So you have those like strange, interesting little kind of creatures.
Oh yeah, absolutely, and it's I think that stems from psychedelics, of course. People tripping on mushrooms and whatever they could find, and then being in nature, and then of course you see things, and then you mythologize those things, those beings, and if that's turned into structures, then you could start communicating regularly with those spirits and have them help you. And the interesting thing is not whether it's true or not. It's true enough for those people. It was true enough for those people, and it probably still is for those people who are connected in those ways. But the interesting thing is the fact that talk about primordial religion, it's everything has to do with how we communicate with a greater nature, with the outer nature, the nature that is not specifically human, the nature that is not specifically me.
Sweden, as far as COVID goes, they kind of did some interesting things. What has been the result of that? And what have you kind of like observed for yourself there?
Well, I think it's an interesting dichotomy, and I mean, I get amazed that when American media, for instance, write about Sweden as being some kind of exception. I don't think it was that exceptional, actually, what happened. The sad thing, I mean, this is all, we can argue back this and that and this and that and different methods of dealing with it, but Sweden tried to be a little bit more lenient, simply to allow for more healthy people to be infected, I guess, meaning strong people, so that there will be an overall stronger sense of immunity, which works in the case of normal influenzas that usually come to our part of the world once per year. But this one was more devious in the sense that the reason why the statistics went up, but not only in Sweden, but also in Italy, Spain, France, etc., it was because of the fact that the virus got inside the homes, like the elderly homes. Right. And that the death toll skyrocketed because they had no sense of resistance. They were simply too frail. And so that's the criticism here now. We should have done more to save them specifically. But in terms of general statistics, I think Sweden is like number 30 on the list of deaths per capita or something like that. So that's not really high ranking. So obviously we must have done something right in the greater picture. Then of course everybody has had a huge toll, but I think the latest number I saw is like in Sweden 7,000 people have died. In Italy, like 60,000 people have died. In the US, it's getting close to 250,000. And then you can say that, well, it has to do with per capita and stuff like that. It's just everything is sad. That's the bottom line. And what Sweden did differently was that they had hopes to basically have a larger percentage of the healthy, strong population to be infected, simply because of the fact that when that's been taken care of, they won't, the virus won't move so quickly to those who are not strong enough. You could argue that it's good or bad. We're still now going through this thing called the second wave. So that goes through all of the countries, even those who shut down immediately. Like Denmark, they were much tougher than Sweden and say, we're shutting down, we'll have none of this. But they're on par with us in terms of deaths per capita. So it's a very, very sad thing. And you can not probably analyze this until it's over and see whatever these people did was wrong, whatever these people did was right, and how can you measure it? Is it only quantifiable by, deaths per 1,000 or 1 million people? Sadness, I think, is not quantifiable in that way. So I don't know what to say. I know that Sweden is sort of singled out, but when we're here and it's like nothing. I know people who have had elderly relatives who have died. That's a real shame and sad. But they are, unfortunately, also, if you want to look at it realistically, they are in these homes to die, basically. That's another like sad, almost cynical thing to say, but that's the thing. And that I think is true for, you could look at it from a societal analysis also, is that who are the most susceptible to be torn or damaged the most. But it's usually like poor people and people like immigrants who live many people together in the apartment, stuff like that. So it is like a class issue too. Most Swedish families are kind of small. It's like, I think, 2 kids on average, and most people here in Stockholm are very well educated and follow the news and stuff like that. But of course, there is a segment of the population also who have no choice but to go to work, for instance. Most people, a lot of people in Sweden work from home now. That was the government saying you should work from home. That's the kind of a draconian measure, but one that's proven to be very, very good because of the fact that the less people who are out there, the better it is to contain and control the virus. And also this thing with wearing masks. There are a lot more people wearing masks now than in the spring, for instance. So people adapt. And that's basically all I can say. I have no idea what's going on. I mean, you get good reports, I'm sure, in most media, but I've seen some horrendous things. It's like Sweden is singled out, and I can't figure out why. Why are we singled out when each country has their own catastrophe going on?
Yeah, that's the thing, is that to really all these kind of measures and all these things that have been put into place, like, I think that we're going to be in a position really when the smoke clears, is like history is going to deal with that stuff. Like we're going to deal mistakes are going to be made. And we're just going to have to assess how mistakes cannot be made next time. I mean, it just really comes simply down to that, really.
No, I absolutely hope so. But then again, you could argue that, whoa, do people really learn from their mistakes?
Yeah.
Historically, that's not been the case here.
Yeah, well, that's the depressing part of history. Trust me, as a student of it, I can totally agree with that statement. Well, Carl, this has been awesome. It's been awesome to have you sit in with us tonight. And where can people find the Fenrir Swift, and where can people find Devil's Footprint?
Well, I think the easiest thing is that, basically wherever they're buying their books online. Because I have had one thing change for me this year. For instance, my own mail order business has dwindled, and I'm pretty happy with that because I'm sort of fed up with going and packing packages and stuff. But with accessibility through the online stores, whether people are used to shopping at Amazon or Book Depository or whatever they're called, they're all there. Fenris Wolf is there, all the issues, and The Devil's Footprint is there at Amazon and Book Depository, and basically where people normally buy their books online. Because the thing is that what killed what was a big problem in my mail order business is that postage is so fucking expensive now. And why would someone in the US buy a book from me when the cost of postage is as much, if not more, than the actual book?
Right.
It's insane.
Right.
So that's beyond me. I can't control it. So I'm adapting to the situation, and I'm working, selling books on Amazon. I'm completely fine with that, and it makes for easy for people to find it, and it's cheap for them to order. The postage is cheap. I don't want to be a salesperson for Amazon, but it's worked pretty well so far. So basically, they can find these books wherever they buy books online.
Very great, very great. And people can find your website where?
That's basically my first and last name, carlabrahamsson.com.
All right. Excellent. Thanks for coming on, Carl.
Thank you very much for having me, and good luck with the podcast, and let's just stay in touch.
Absolutely, sir. Absolutely. We'll have this up, I think, in about this will be up in about a couple of weeks. So I will tag you in it. I'll post it on your Facebook group as well. So
yeah, beautiful, and I'll post it in our network also. And do let me know if you need anything. I'll send you some other relevant links. It's so boring to listen to links, but people can maybe read them. And if you need any photographs, whatever, I'll just let me know what you need.
Okay, awesome. Thank you so much, Carl. Thank you for joining us.
Take care, man.
All right,
see you.
Bye. Bye.
All right, guys, welcome back to Conspirinormal. That was a great episode with Carl Abrahamsson. Really cool to have him on, talk about The Devil's Footprint and his publication, The Fenris Wolf.
And I know a couple listeners are very happy that they got to hear Adam say wolf a lot.
Yes, they always are. I'm sure Heather, if she still listens to the show, she's more than happy to hear me say woof. Wow. So, how's everything going, Serfiel?
It was pretty good. Despite my best protocols and only seeing one person and doing takeout and all of that, grocery shopping with a mask on, I did contract coronavirus. COVID-19, but I am recovering well. It's just, everyone out there, you don't want to get this, it's going to knock you on your ass for a while. And the ongoing fatigue and waxing and waning, it lasts a long time. So you really don't want to deal with this. Be safe. Wash your hands. Wear a mask.
Yeah,
it's not
because
fun.
We're recording this on December the 8th, so by the time this episode is out, hopefully you will be long recovered. And, but this started what, has it been a week now?
Yeah,
since you started feeling symptoms?
Yeah, I think it's exactly a week. So, yeah, my mother was hospitalized. I did not interact with my mother. But she also got it, and she was hospitalized. She's okay. That's good. Do know of other people who it's been even worse for, and I would just suggest that it is real, and especially older people. It can very severely impact them. People with pre-existing conditions. But it's definitely real. It's not like a regular cold or flu I've had. It's a real pain in the ass.
Yeah. So everybody that's listening, I guess in the future, just pray Sergio gets well. And,
yeah, I'm gonna be all right.
He's a trooper though. He still did the show with COVID. So that just shows how dedicated he is to Conspirinormal.
Of course, we are not in the same place.
We are not in the same place. I am over 100 miles away, so that's good. No, can't get any cooties. So I think on that note, guys, I think we're going to just end this episode. But special thanks to Carl Abrahamsson for being a part of this, and check out his books and what he has available. And also, guys, you want to check out our Patreon, Conspirinormal, patreon.com/Conspirinormal. We've got a lot of great stuff up there. We're trying to do once a week, weekly episodes. And eventually, I think pretty soon by the time this show gets out, we will be announcing new tiers as well. So that are going to be starting around January 1st. So stay tuned for that. So usual stuff, the YouTube channel, Conspirinormal Podcast, and leave a rate and review on iTunes if you feel so inclined. And I think that's it. And to spare Sergio his voice anymore, we'll just say signing off, and we'll see you next time on Conspirinormal.
If you would like to help the show, please consider becoming a Patreon at www.patreon.com/Conspirinormal, or leave a one-time donation at Conspirinormal.com. And please check out our YouTube channel, Conspirinormal Podcast.